Hello and welcome to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel. I am Jessica, the knitter and designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits. In this video, I am going to talk all about the Endless Woods Cowl design. This cowl is one of 4 patterns in the A New Home collection, which is releasing on November 21st of 2020. That is, November 21st is the birthday of North Carolina, when North Carolina joined the Union. So the collection, A New Home, is all about the state of North Carolina. It's the state where I now live. We moved here about a year ago, and so it is our new home. This collection is one collection within the series of the Home series. So the collection before this was my Forever Home collection, which was a collection of 5 DK weight patterns inspired by my home state, Montana. And then this A New Home collection is all about North Carolina, includes 4 knitting patterns, all inspired by North Carolina using fingering weight yarn. So this pattern, the Endless Woods Cowl, is inspired by the woods and the forests of North Carolina. One thing that was very obvious when we moved here, we actually moved from Wyoming, which is a lot of mostly barren land, pretty bare, some sagebrush and some dirt. And so moving out here, the trees were so obvious. Seems like there's trees everywhere. We live in Charlotte area, and like you can drive around the interstate around Charlotte and there's still trees all around you, and it totally just brings in this whole feeling like you're in nature even when you're surrounded by all this stuff that's man-made. So I really love that feel. I love all the green, and I love the trees and all of it. So that's what inspired the cowl. You can probably see here there are 2 different textures in the cowl. The bottom here is a cabled motif, and that represents the roots. So of course there's got to be a root system underneath all of the trees, and then up above are the trees, or branches, or whatever you want to call them. It's a slipped cross stitch motif that creates the trees, and you might notice here that there is a variety of different motifs. So the pattern, as the pattern is written, it includes 1 motif, but then at the end of the pattern I include 4 alternate trees motifs, so that you can, if you want to use different trees, you can use different trees. What I did here was I used a different tree for each one in the round. So this is the largest size, and it has 5 trees in circumference. So each tree is a different tree in the round, and then of course each round just uses all 5 options. So then you have a forest of trees that are all different, or of course you can have your forest all matching. So as I mentioned, this is the large size. The pattern includes 3 different sizes, but really there's an option of 9 different combinations. So there's 3 size options in lengthwise and circumference wise. So this version here is the long version and the large version in circumference. So I know for sure the small version just has 1 row of trees. The medium version has 2 rows of trees, and the large version has 3 rows of trees, and those proportions are also reflected in the roots section. So the yarn used here, I used a fingering weight held double with a mohair, which gives this super cozy, fuzzy cowl. It's a lot of fun to wear. It's a lot of fun just to feel the texture. But if you don't want to work with mohair, you can substitute a DK weight instead, and that will give you the same kind of density of the yarn and a similar stitch gauge, similar fabric for the gauge. some of my test knitters also just used fingering weight with no mohair, and you can see those project pages on Ravelry if that would be something you're interested in. Of course, that will create a lighter fabric, won't be quite as warm and cozy. But do make sure whatever yarn you use that you're getting gauge. And I have included in the pattern the gauge for both the root section and the tree section. So definitely check your gauge for both of those. Some of my test knitters found that their gauge was a lot tighter for the trees, so they should have gone up in needle size for the tree section. So I've included a note in there that says, hey, remember, if your gauge is different for the trees than what I recommend in the pattern, make sure you change your needle size. So as far as yarn, I mentioned this is mohair, this is fingering. The yarn that I used is from Hearts on Fiber, which is a local yarn shop and yarn dyer here in the Charlotte area. All of the patterns within the A New Home collection used yarn dyers from within North Carolina. So Hearts on Fiber is located in Davidson. It's a local yarn shop here. And Kim also dyes her own yarn. So the yarn that I used here is MCN Sock is the fingering base, and that is a oh goodness, Mangrove Forest is the colorway. The mohair is a mohair silk blend, and that colorway is mahogany. And if you're catching this right around the time the pattern is releasing, Kim has kits available on pre-order for the Endless Woods Cowl. So she's put together multiple options of color combos that you can check out if you're interested in the yarn kit. That only includes the yarn, it does not include the pattern. So you do still need to purchase the pattern separately. The other thing is, if you're not interested in using Hearts and Fiber yarn, or even if you are, I have included a blog post in the pattern that includes yarn color suggestions and then alternate yarn recommendations. So the first half of the blog post, I've put together some combinations of mohair and fingering weight, as well as a couple of DK weight options from Kim's selection of colors. So those are Hearts on Fiber colors, just to give some inspiration on different colors if you're struggling with deciding what colors to use. And then the second half of that blog post includes alternate yarn recommendations. So those are more affordable yarn options, primarily from like big box stores, that will also give you a lovely cowl. And then I haven't included specific color recommendations for each of those alternate yarns, but I highly recommend just use those color suggestions that I recommended for Hearts and Fibers. You can use those color ideas and apply those also to the other yarns. So that is the large size, and then this one is the medium size. So it has 2 rows, as you can tell, and these are different colors. So in the pattern, this design, this knit, includes a couple of the alternate options that I include in the pattern. So that includes the bottom of the cowl. You can just knit on with start with a long tail cast on here, and you'll notice that that edge, it rolls a little bit. It doesn't bother me, I think it's fine, but that does bother some people. So I do have in there that you can, if you want to use that cast on, you can go ahead and knit some garter after the cast on, just to help it lay flat, or you can use an I-cord bind off. So what I've done here is the I-cord bind off and then just a couple of rows of garter to help that lay really nice and flat. And then I have finished off the pattern for both versions. This is the only option I have in the pattern. Of course, you can alter it if you want, but I had an I-cord bind off at the top of the cowl. So the cowl is worked bottom up. It starts with the cast on, you move to the roots, you have a decrease section, the trees, and then the I-cord bind off. So I think that's pretty much everything. We talked about sizing, we talked about yarn, talked about design inspiration. One thing with the sizing, so on the pattern pages on my website and on each of the locations where you can purchase the pattern, I've included all of the dimensions for each of the sizes. So I have the circumference for the top part and the circumference for the bottom part, so you have an idea of what the sizes are. And so you'll notice that for the sizes, especially for the top circumferences, some of those are smaller than your head circumference. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your size. If you want to have positive ease, if you don't want... So apparently my camera cut me off. But what I was saying was when you're selecting your size, just be cautious in paying attention to what the size of the finished object is, because some of the circumferences are smaller than an adult head circumference. And so while the fabric is very stretchy and it'll go over your head quite easily, the top of the cowl might be snug around your neck. This is the medium size again, and there's a fair bit of room, but if you don't like having stuff close to your neck, you do not want to work one of the small circumference and maybe not the medium circumference. Maybe you should look at the large circumference. And again, you can work any of the lengths with any of their circumferences. So if you need a large circumference but you want a shorter cowl, you can do that. You just work the shorter length with the larger circumference. So let's see here. I guess now I don't know what I talked about. But we talked about design inspiration, we talked about the yarns. Not sure if it recorded the bit about pattern pages. So in the description below, I will include a link to the pattern information page on my website, www.snickerdoodleknits.com. And that pattern page has all of the information about the pattern. I talk about knitting techniques used in the pattern. I talk about the knitting experience. I talk about the design inspiration. I talk about what it's like to wear the cowl, when you're going to want to wear the cowl. And then I have all of the general information about materials, how much yarn you'll need, the tools you'll need, like cable needles. And within that section where I talk about the yarn, I have the blog post linked that talks about alternative yarn recommendations and color suggestions. And then on that whole page, I have multiple spots where I link where you can purchase the pattern. So right now the pattern is available on LoveCrafts, Ravelry, and Payhip. And if in the future that changes, of course, I will update the website. The website will be kept up to date so that all of the purchasing options are available there. So that's how you get your hands on the pattern. That's how you get all of the information about the pattern. If you ever have any questions at all, go ahead and contact me. My information is on the pattern. Or if you have any questions before you purchase the pattern, go ahead and comment down below, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So I think that's everything. I hope this video answered all of your questions around the cowl. I hope you're super excited to knit it. And if you like the video, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I post YouTube video tutorials for techniques within my patterns, knitting tutorial techniques. And I also have a design overview video for each pattern that I publish. So I look forward to seeing you around, and I wish you happy knitting.